So it's been about a month or so since we did the electrical install here on the container, but it's finally at a place where I'm excited to bring you guys in there, check it out, and just show you what I've done with it to make it a functional shop slash storage unit. So without further ado, let's check it out. Hey guys, my name's James.
And I'm Ashley.
3 years ago, we sold our house and we've been traveling across the country ever since.
Hi, I'm Goose. I'm Ashley.
Join us! So one of the things I really want to do in my workshop here, which I really haven't given you a tour of yet, but I'm going to wait till I get a little bit more organized before I do like an official walkthrough. But for those of you that don't know, we bought a 40-foot shipping container that eventually will be used for our shipping container house that we plan on building down the road. But for now, while we're doing the shop remodel, we're using it as our storage slash workshop. So we've got all the tools out here and whatnot, but at sunset or even before sunset, it gets real dark in here real fast. So what I've started doing already is I've removed 3 of these guys. These are LED shop lights. There was a handful of those in the shop that we're remodeling, but since we're doing can lights in there, I took 3 of the 12 lights, I believe, that are in there in total, and I'm gonna go ahead and put these in here. And as you can see, I've already got 2 of them hanging up here. I've strung just a little wire, a little cable from one end of the container to the back end, and then these will be spaced out probably in the front half of the container. And the great thing about these lights is since they are LED, they use very little power. So all I'm gonna be doing, since this is a temporary shop solution, is running an extension cord from here over to our RV or potentially into the shop, whichever one I think is closer. It might be easier just to have it plugged into the RV, which is adjacent to the container. And then I'm going to come in through one of these little vent holes up here. And as you can see, there are already 2 of these vents in the very front of the container where they have drilled holes. So I'm just gonna make that hole a little bit bigger and run the extension cord out through there. And then that will allow me to close up the doors and seal it up completely to keep critters and whatnot from getting in here at night or if we're gone for extended periods of time. But having that power in here for things that I need not only for the shop lights, but for charging power tools or for running the table saw, the miter saw and whatnot. So it's really important, if I really do want this to be a shop, I have to have power in here. So we'll run that extension cord into the house and plug it into one of the 20 amp breakers in there instead of plugging it into the exterior source on the RV, because I believe that's only a 10 or a 15 amp breaker. So I'd rather have more power than not enough.
Everybody tryna go, yeah, the party jumping off. Hey, we putting on a show, tryna catch a vibe. We do this every time, like na 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 na. Feeling like I'm on the highway, cause everything been going my way. And now they looking at me sideways. I'm like na 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 na.
Assuming. So I wasn't quite sure if this drill bit would go through that metal. Granted, it was already half gone because of the holes that were pre-drilled there, but I didn't really care about it. It was this old, beat up old bit. So got a little hot, a little smoky because the rubber's still in there from the other side, but it worked. So now all we gotta do is feed the very same cable through to the other side, and then let's fill it in with some caulk. It's cooled off. There we go. So we might end up just doing something like that where the outlet's right up there, and then I just run some more cables down to the workshop over here. As you can tell, that's why I need some light in here. Look how dark it is. Outside, inside. One of the things I wanted to talk about, which really everybody should know this, whether you're doing any sort of remodels or traveling or whatever, everybody at some point in time uses an extension cable, and you should really know that every cable is not the same. Now granted, I'm sure most of you know there are outdoor cables, there are indoor cables, but most of you might think that, hey, this orange cable and this orange cable, they both look like they're outdoor rated cables, but they're actually different. So it's pretty obvious indoor versus outdoor. A lot of the indoor ones don't even have grounds. They're just used for little basic things like table lamps and whatnot. That's pretty simple. But what I want to point out too is if we look really closely on this cable, every cable, whether it's the green ones, the orange ones and whatnot, they have the information printed on them. Not printed, but like embedded into the plastic. So if we look really closely here, we can see that this one is 14 AWG. So that's the gauge of the wire, is 14 gauge. It's rated for 300 volts, and it even tells you the temperature rating, like 75 degrees Celsius or down to 50 degrees, negative 50 degrees Celsius. So being from America, I'm gonna have to do the math, but I'm pretty sure that's well over the operating temperatures that we're gonna be in. But what I was trying to do, and the reason I bring this up, is I was trying to find the highest rated extension cable I can, because like I said, I'm gonna be powering everything in the container shop. So miter saws, charging things, lights and whatnot off of the one cord. Which a good thing is I'm using the LED lights, so they're not gonna use that much power. But since I'm gonna be siliconing this in there and making it like a permanent attachment, semi-permanent attachment, I wanted to make sure I used the best cord I have. And unfortunately, most of my cables are all like this one, which I believe are 16 AWG. Yeah, so this one is 16 AWG. The funny thing is it still says it's rated for 300 volts, yet it's a whole gauge smaller, because the way it works is it goes 16, 14, 12, 10, and each one of those, the lower your number, the more amperage and voltage it can handle going through it. So I would expect the 14 gauge to be able to handle a lot more than 300 volts compared to the 16 gauge. It would be nice if I had a 12 gauge, because then I would know I could run pretty much everything off of it, because most what I'm wiring our house with is 12 gauge wire. It's like the 12-2 Romex. I'm pretty sure I'll be fine with this 14 gauge wire, because a lot of appliances or a lot of light fixtures and things like that are wired in your house with 14 gauge wire, and this will all be exposed, so it's not like it's hidden behind a wall or anything. So if there's any issues and whatnot with heating or like the melting of the edges because of the wire shorting out or whatnot, I'll be able to see it. So I think we'll be fine. This is the one I'm going to use. But while I was on the topic of extension cords, I wanted to do that quick little tutorial to educate you guys, because until recently, like, I knew that there was a difference between like the thickness of the cables. I could feel it, but I didn't know that they were actually printed on here. I just never noticed that. Like, unless you look really closely on this orange one, you would miss it. Like, you can't see that on there even on a close-up. Now, some of them are far easier to see, like this one is a much easier to read, and I think that's because it's the higher gauge. It's probably used in construction more and whatnot, and so they want to be able to see that information more clearly. But on every extension cable like this, you should be able to find that fine print printed on your cable. Okay, enough about that. Let's go caulk this in place. So this is the same basic caulking, the outdoor, indoor molding caulking that I just got, that I used for our septic system when I installed that. You guys want to see, I guess I didn't install that. When I installed the septic receptacle for the RV, if you guys want to see that video, I will link it up right there. But it's just outdoor, basic DAP for things like doors and windows and whatnot. And so it should work perfectly for this that we're doing here. You guys, check it out. As I was caulking up this, I got a neighbor. Oh, she heard me talking about her. There's a couple females around that have babies since it's that time of the year, and there's one with 2 of them, and then I saw another one with just 1. I'm assuming they're different moms, but I caught one on my cell phone, so here, check it out. I'll put it in right now. Super cute little babies. They still have their spots on them, so they're super Bambi-like. The girls are loving it, and since the girls aren't here right now, actually, it's much quieter for some reason. You know, who knew? But I've come outside a couple times recently and seen that specific solo female just chilling and eating right down by the trampoline, or as you saw right there. And since it's just me, they're much more comfortable coming up real close to us. I love it. This is one of the best things about being out here away from the city in the country. It's the same thing with traveling, while we like boondocking and whatnot, because you have this nature that just climatizes to you and gets comfortable with you. Sorry, I'm looking to see if I can find him at the same time. I just love it. All right, let's plug her in and see if we get power. So as you can tell, it's getting a little bit dark in here, so unless I'm out in the direct sunlight, you really can't see much of anything back here. So let's plug in our lights and see if it works. Caulking still looks good. Fingers crossed. Oh, check that out. Now that's what I'm talking about. So it's been about a month or so since we did the electrical install here on the container, but it's finally at a place where I'm excited to bring you guys in there, check it out, and just show you what I've done with it to make it a functional shop / storage unit. So without further ado, let's check it out. So right away here in the entryway, something super simple that I just recently did is I have a hook here for rain jackets. I plan to put a couple more here because when I'm outside working and I'm getting all nasty or wet, I do not want to bring in that dirty old rain jacket into our trailer where we already have humidity issues and stuff like that. So being able to have a place to hang this and keep it out here where I can access it when I need it, but not worrying about dirtying up the trailer was a super simple yet great little fix. And then let's just talk about this entryway here. So right where I'm standing here is kind of my catch-all spot. I have things like the trash can, my dolly, sometimes the lawnmower is even parked right here, and this spot fluctuates and changes a lot because it's right in the front. Right now I got some extra plywood and this pallet here that just has kind of ended up here recently because as we try and get things in and out of the weather, this is kind of the first stop for it to go. So this front area is kind of purposely left open because it's constantly fluctuating with stuff coming in and out. Also up here in front, this is probably the most prominent thing right here, these rows and rows of insulation. All of this insulation is what came from the walls when I did that demolition. If you didn't see that video, I will link it up there, where I completely removed all of the walls, took down some things, and we saved all of this insulation because we knew we would either have to use it for the ceiling, maybe even in some of the walls. We weren't 100% sure, but we knew we were going to use this in the future, and I actually have some plans for it, and I'll let you know that in a future video. But that's what all this is, nothing but insulation up here in the front. All right, now we get to what I call like the workbench area of the shop. This area was purposely left open so that I could easily bring wood in here to use the miter saw, to cut things, to measure things. So I have everything laid out here that I need. I have my pencils, my speed jigs for doing measuring and angles and whatnot. All of this in the front here, this workspace was purposely left open so I could get wood out and in easily and cut things and do things out of the weather and still have everything accessible. So then if we look underneath here, all sorts of variety of storage. This is like my fastener area. So this is where I have nails, staples, some bolts, as well as flashing tape and things for the windows and the doors. This is kind of like my fastener section that I have here. Then as we move further down, the next most prominent thing would be the tool wall. And this is actually something that I was really excited about. Since this is a shipping container that I wanted to keep waterproof and that we planned on using for other projects in the future, like building the shipping container house, I didn't want to drill any unnecessary holes in it. So I found on Amazon these really cool magnetic hooks. So these are just little tiny hooks. I have different size ones. Some are rated for heavier duty weights, like these over here. These ones are incredibly strong. I can hang full-on power tools from it, like weed whackers and whatnot. And then I have smaller ones like this, which I can just hang little things like wrenches and pliers and other things on there. And I can move them wherever I want and adjust them as needed as I decide things are working here or not working here, and it allows me to utilize all this space. And then I just have more work surface here where I have all my power tools. So we've got nail guns, staple guns, impact drills, saws, sanders, every kind of cordless tool you could want I have here, which I love. Not to mention, since I have power here, I'm able to have this be my charging station. So I've got all my 20 volt system charges here. I've got my 40 volt system chargers here for things like my chainsaw and weed whacker and whatnot, and it's all easily accessible, as well as, you know, my DeWalt one for the nail gun, all right here, all easily accessible, all organized, so I always know where everything is. And then if we turn around here, this is what I'm calling the yard care section. So I have things like pressure washers, hedge trimmers, little saws for cutting down branches and whatnot. This is what I climbed up that tree with and cut down the top of that tree. That was a crazy experience. Things like gloves, the pressure washer attachments, chainsaws, leaf blowers, weed whackers, everything I would need for the yard. This is kind of like my exterior yard section. Down below here I have things like pesticides, oils, gas, paints, all that organized nicely and neatly here so I know where it is. All while trying to keep this area as open as possible so that we can move objects from the back of the container to the front, because the back half is the storage section. So back here gets a little less organized. I still tried to keep it organized, but it's definitely a little more chaotic. We have things like 2x6s and 2x8s that we've either purchased or that I've reclaimed from disassembling things inside. And as well over here we have pressure treated, unpressure treated 2x4s, 4x4s, other smaller pieces of wood over here to where I can quickly and easily access them. So if I am framing up a wall and I need to use something simple for, you know, a brace in between or whatever, it's easily accessible right here in the front. And then the further back we go, the less commonly accessed items are stored. So I have things like our spray foam insulation that I bought for half price on Facebook, as well as things like joint compound for when we eventually get to doing the sheetrock, and this is stuff for fixing the roofs. Just all sorts of random things that I do need just not very often, are stored back here. And as we move further back, again, it gets less and less commonly accessed things. Actually, plywood here, I kind of wish I would have moved in front of the sheetrock, because I definitely access the plywood far more often now than I do the sheetrock, so that's a little mishap, but there's no way I was moving these hundreds of pounds of plywood one step over just to make life that much easier, because you know, it wouldn't. Windows that we bought secondhand, washer and dryer back here, insulation, doors for interior, utility sinks, PEX for doing plumbing. We've got spare doors, all that stuff you saw me unload, plus way more is all stored back here. We have some shelves even where we have appliances like microwaves. I've got Romex wire. I've got receptacle outlets for when we do wiring. So much stuff is stored back here that I just don't need, but if I find it for a good deal, I buy it because I know I have a place for it back here. We have tried to buy as much secondhand or gently used as possible where applicable. So things like Romex, people wire a whole house and they still have 100 feet left that I can get for half price. So I've tried to do stuff like that where it's still good quality stuff, but I can get it at a discount because, as you guys know, we're doing this all for a budget. We're doing it all cash. We don't want to go into debt for this project, so we're trying to be as frugal as possible. And that's pretty much it. That's where it ends, back there with rugs and other random storage stuff for the house. Alright guys, Goose is testing out the cement mixer. What do you think, love?
It's good.
It's good? It works well?
Uh-huh.
Did you get it locked into place? Can you figure out how to use it?
Alright, so I think you need to turn it on.
Lift up on the handle. Lift up on the handle.